And awesome. It is now 5 o'clock on the West Coast. So let's kick this off and get it started. So welcome everyone to the Thursday, July 20th edition of the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel User Group Meetup. For reference, you will notice that I still call it Power BI. Parv, and Joseph, you'll be able to talk a little bit as to why that's even relevant anymore here, but it's not called a Fabric User Group and will not become so, just so everybody's aware here. We're going to have a presentation from Parv in just a bit, but before we do that, we got a couple of things to cover off here today. So first thing is the thanks to our sponsors. SkillWave, of course, is the title sponsor for the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel User Group. Excel Guru is the parent company of SkillWave, and Monkey Tools is my software add-in that actually allows you to build better data models faster in Excel, read from Power BI, and actually even import your Power BI models into Excel. If you happen to be at the last meetup, you would have seen the demo of that. So if you didn't, you can always check it out on YouTube. Our next meetups that we have coming up. First thing to note here, the next meetup will be in the Excel track. It will be at 1 p.m. Pacific time. We've got Alan Murray coming from London, England to present, and therefore it is going to be earlier than our usual start date. And he's going to be talking about lambdas and beyond. So that's going to be very cool. And then the next Power BI track we have Thursday, August 24th, Reed Havens will be joining us again. That will be at our normal time of 5 p.m. Pacific. And he's going to be talking apparently about ugly babies. So that's going to be kind of an interesting one as well, I'm sure. I'm always interested to see what Reed does with data visualization. So I'm sure it'll be fantastic. Big announcement here. This is the first time that anybody has heard of this outside of our organization, but in September, I am going to be working together with John Peltier to do a business intelligence and data visualization boot camps. We have 2 offerings for this. We're going to be live in Portland, Oregon from September 12th through 14th, and again live in Boston, Massachusetts from September 26th to 28th. This is a big package. Obviously, there's 4 days of training that are available here. In addition to this, if you do actually come and attend one of these sessions in person, and I can tell you, I mean, Stanton's done one of these things in the past. He can tell you how much fun this is. We also include for the SSBI Bootcamp a 1-year subscription to the live online version, the online version of this as well, because it has so much content. We can't possibly actually cover it all in the 3 to 4 days here. I'm also super excited to say that I've just re-recorded all of the Power BI content for the Self-Service BI Bootcamp. We've increased it from about 2 hours to about 5 hours of Power BI specific content in there. Added a bunch of stuff on dimensional modeling that I felt was missing from it as well. So there's a whole bunch of new material that's going to be coming in within the next couple of days into this product. So this is a great opportunity to be in person with us, and also to pick up the opportunity to get into more of the stuff online as well. The URL to take a look at that product is here. Of course, all of these are included in the package of PDF that is up on the Meetup site already. If you're looking for the recordings of any of our previous VanPUG sessions or this one in about 24 hours, you will find them at the SkillWave YouTube channel. And we also encourage you to go and check out our Monkey Shorts video, which has very short, technical, bite-sized pieces of content that you can actually nail off really quickly, less than 3 minutes or so, in order to go and pick up some quick tips. And there's a cool one right off the top here about creating a development production switch in Power Query so that you can switch between your development and production data set. For all of you who have actually worked with massive data sets, you know how slow Power Query can be refreshing. This is a great tip to actually keep yourself performant as you're developing your solutions. Last thing that I'm going to say before I hand this over to Joseph here is if you'd like to come and speak to the Power BI user group or on either Power BI or Excel or anything that actually ties into that stack, we would love to have you. We are currently looking for people. Actually, we're looking for, I think we have a couple of spots to fill up for 2023, and then we're actually looking into 2024 already. Really thrilled that we've got a huge lineup coming out here, but we're always making room for people, and we would love to have you here. So if you're interested in coming and speaking on our stage, definitely let us know at the survey here. And on that note, that is my bit for today. So Joseph, I am going to fade my screen to black here and turn it over to you, my friend, so that you can talk to us about what's new in Power BI. And I think you've got some material to cover for us.
Quite a bit of material, I think.
Yeah,
this time.
And by the way, dude, I'm like, again, I need to say just on camera, on the recording, I'm so happy you're here because it just is so much better when you're doing this stuff. So anyway, I'll shut up now. Your turn.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Ken, for the introduction. And welcome everyone to another month of what's new in Power BI. So as Ken was just alluding to, I missed the presentation last month. And I actually had 2 months worth of material to go through because we missed May. So I actually have 3 months of material to get through, or 3 months of features, I should say, to get through today. So probably going to be a little bit more of an overview. I'll dive deep into some of my favorite features from the last 3 months, but we are looking at May, June, and July. And in May, as we've sort of been talking about in this leading up to the presentation, we had the big Microsoft Fabric preview announcement. Had a whole section of itself in the May What's New in Power BI blog post. So a whole bunch of special announcements from Microsoft Fabric. How this is relevant to Power BI? Well, we had some generally available features, some preview features now, and there was just so much stuff going in that had its own blog post here. So we can scroll through this. I'd really recommend reading this if you hadn't heard of Fabric, or you've heard of Fabric but you're not really sure what it is. And I'm sure in maybe 15 minutes we will find out a lot more about Fabric as well. But yeah, lots and lots of features coming out here. Could probably be its own feature session in the meetup group. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over Fabric right now. But May, this was like the big buzz, and this would have been really cool to be able to do live as it was coming out, but we're a little bit behind, but that's okay. Some of my other favorite features from Power BI in May were Azure Maps becoming generally available and measure-driven data labels. So those are the 2 features that I'm going to focus on from the May feature release. So if we head into Power BI, we can see exactly what that looks like. So if I go to my Azure data map here, I'm going to continue to be using on-object, both formatting and just to actually create my visual. This came out, I think, before May, but within May, June, and July, all the 3 months we're going to be going over today, we've been getting little updates, bug fixes, and really just the experience of creating and formatting our visuals on object on our visual now is just becoming better and better and more seamless. And I'm sure part of that is just as I get used to using it as my as part of my workflow, as opposed to always going to the right of the screen. But it's been a great update, and we'll see it in use as we go through. So to create our Azure map, if I go to our US cities table, I can add our latitude field as the latitude, our longitude field as the longitude, coincidentally, and then as I do that, the map renders really quickly. I really like using Azure Maps as opposed to some of the other map visuals that we have in Power BI. It's been a really enjoyable experience, and I've actually started to replace some previous map visuals with the Azure map visual. It functions just like we would expect, similar to other maps. When it comes out to actually building it, we can add things like legends. So if we wanted to add in the state, we can color all these points by state in the US. We can add size onto these individual bubbles. So if we have, I think we have population, yeah. So we can see usually it's Los Angeles and New York have huge bubbles, bigger one here in Chicago as well, and the rest are a little bit smaller. But what I like about, let me just click off this. What I like about the Azure Maps as well is we have the option, if we go into the formatting options here, we can add things like category labels, 3D column layer, a traffic layer, which is pretty cool. And if I go to more options to pull up the full formatting pane on the side here, we do have, sorry, not layer settings, map settings. We have the option to change some of the background colors. We have quite an exhaustive list of different backgrounds if we wanted like a road view as opposed to a satellite view. If I do that, and then if we zoom into California, and we can have an idea of a little bit of lag with the here we go, a little bit of lag with the team setup, but just like that, it's a pretty good experience, and yeah, I've really enjoyed using this map visual. But then the other update for May that I wanted to look at are measure-driven labels. So what that means is if I look at this column chart in the bottom left-hand corner here, And if I wanted to add data labels to this column chart, I could just toggle on data labels. And now we can see that at the end of each bar, relative to the values of the y-axis, we can see the exact amount or the exact length of that bar. So right now, this visual, we're looking at our total balance measure by account product, I believe. And so we can see labels give us an exact one as opposed to the values of the y-axis, which just gives us sort of a relative comparison to look at. And one thing that we may want to do with our charts is we may want to have data labels that aren't related to our axis. We may want to add additional information to these bars or really drive either the formatting or just the content of these data labels in a different way. And so to do that, we can use these new measure-driven data labels. So if I go to this data label section here, under values, we have the option to, where did it go? I think I might be in the wrong place. Here we go. Let me click back on. We go to data labels. Oh, weird. Okay. And we should be able to add something in this field. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Doing wrong here. Sorry? Oh, I thought I heard someone.
Apologize for that, Joseph.
No problem. Okay. Weird. Okay. Not sure what's going on with the options for data labels, but we see we do have the field option here. And this is where I was going to do a super cool demo to add a different field in to change the data labels. But I'm not sure why it's grayed. I'm not sure why it's grayed out. So maybe I will come back to that at the end if we have time, but I don't want to get caught up in that. So we're just going to continue moving forward and we'll move on to the June update. I'm actually at another new visual or an improvement of an existing visual in June, which was our new and improved card visual. So I'm just going to make a little bit of room with this line chart here. And from the Home tab on the ribbon, we can now insert our visuals from here. And we have a section for gauge, card, and KPI. So our existing card visual is still there. And now we have the card visual with a little lightning thunderbolt thing. And this is the new card visual. And if you do use card visuals in your report, I would absolutely recommend to check out this new version because it's just super cool and it is way better than the old card visual. So what we can do with this one is we can quickly add lots of different measures or lots of different of these call out values just within the same visual. Previously, we had to either create a card visual, format it how we wanted it, and then copy and paste it, and then change the value and like group them together. Or we could use the multi-card visual, which like sometimes met the requirements we were looking for, but sometimes not. But now really quickly, we can just add multiple fields directly to this card visual. And we have lots of good formatting options as well to really help make it look exactly like how we want to. So this includes changing even just the shape. Right now we see we have a couple boxes within the visual, but we can change this to a more modern looking rounded rectangle, which is really nice. If we decrease the font size of these call out values to give us a little bit more room to work with, we have exhaustive formatting options in terms of the background color of the cards, the font color, even the labels. We can do things like put them above or below the value. We can set the spacing options. We really have just so many formatting options we didn't have available to us before. And we can also, if we go to the cards here, do things like add shadow onto them. We can add glow if we want to remove the shadow. Lots of options that really make these card visuals look really modern and give us sleek, better look to our reports. So I really enjoyed playing around with lots of the formatting options for this. Again, would definitely recommend checking out this visual just because it makes it look, yeah, really takes your dashboards to the next level, I feel. And I think this may be a sign of things to come with some of the other visual updates. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there for June, and why don't we move on to July, the newest, the most recent updates, which we're actually fortunate. It is July meetup group, and we do have a feature release for July, so that is nice. And from here, I'm just going to highlight one of my favorite updates, which is the new smooth lines and leading lines for our line chart. So I'm just going to make this line chart a little bit bigger so we can see what we're looking at. So this is pretty standard line chart. As we've made it in Power BI, we do have zoom sliders on the axis here, so we can really zoom into certain areas. But we can see that as the value changes over time, which is on our x-axis, our count of clients, we get a lot of jagged lines because we're just drawing a straight line between the different points on our axis. We see a point we have in January, then a point in February, a point in March, and all we're doing is drawing straight lines between those points to create our line chart. What we can do now instead is if I go to the lines formatting option, we have the option to change the line type now. So we have stat, and stat has actually been here for a while, and there are some really interesting use cases where we would want to use stat. And this is instead of doing a straight line between the points, like from January to February, we're doing sort of a halfway over, step up, step across to the point, which gives it this almost like a column chart look to our line chart, or lots of different column charts within the visual. And what we have now is we have a smoothed version. So rather than all those jaggedy lines, it's now more smooth when we go from January to February to March. The visual's smart enough to really smooth out that trend pattern. We're still getting the same insights. It just looks a little bit more, again, a little bit more sleek, a little bit more modern, and it's just it's sometimes easier to look at. This line chart might be a little bit of a mess just because we have 5 different lines on it. But even here, we can get the idea of how it can really change the look of our line chart without really changing the contents or the insights that we're trying to visualize and derive from it. The other aspect to this, so we've seen the smoothing lines, but now we can also add leading lines for our data labels. So if we just add data labels onto this line chart, we can see that the label for this point just appears right next to the line, for here, right next to the line again, or right underneath the line. But all these data points are appearing right next to the exact point on the chart. And sometimes this can make it really messy to read, like with this chart right now. It's really busy with all the lines and all the numbers. But what I can do instead, if I just close this line section down, in our data labels section, if I set this minimum label offset to something a little bit higher, like we'll change that to 36. Now I have the option to toggle on this leader lines option. And when I do that, we can see that now we have a line on our visual from one of those data points indicating the relevant point on the line or within our visual that that data label is related to. So if I toggle that off, we just have these data labels sort of floating, and we assume that this 13,000 label is related to this blue line here, this sort of the bottom of this blue line. But when we put that back on, now we actually have a line indicating, yeah, this label is related to this point on the chart. And if I increase that offset a bit more, we can increase the size of those lines to move the data label further away. Somewhere in the middle there is probably a better option. But yeah, that's like a big update from this July is the smooth lines and the leader lines for our line, and it also works for area charts as well. So if I just head back into the July feature update, looking at time, I mean, I think we're out of time. There was some additional cool stuff from June and July, but did have to try and fit 3 months worth into this session. But yeah, those are all my favorite features from the last 3 months, I guess. Hopefully next month we have just August to focus on and dive a little bit deeper into. But with that, really happy to pass it back to Parv, pass it back to Ken, and look forward to the feature presentation today. So thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate it. Yeah, 3 months, lots of content to go through. Awesome. Awesome. A great job as usual. Much appreciated. And now we will turn it over to Parv. So welcome back to VanPUG Parv, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you. You can hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine. You bet.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to share my screen. I guess you will see this first slide. Our today's topic, exploring the next generation ETL, Dataflow Gen2. Dataflow is one of the favorite product in Power BI previously, now in Fabric. I'm not sure how many of you guys attended one of the session I did in Vancouver back in 2020. That was 9th January 2020, start of the year. That was on Dataflow, actually. And one of my very largest client here in Vancouver itself is heavily dependent on Dataflow. Now today, after 3 years, we are with the Dataflow Gen2, and they are still on Gen 1. Of course, we are in a preview with Microsoft Fabric. But what I'm going to talk about in this particular presentation today, how Gen 2 is different than Gen 1, and why I really love this, and what is the reasoning behind this is what makes Gen 2 really next generation ETL tool. So we will go through some example. I'm going to do one end-to-end demo in today's session, and but just want to let you guys know, because Fabric is in preview, we all know certain things might not work. And actually, before I started, I was testing a few things. They are not working on my Canada Central tenant, and I'm going to try to make those work. If it does not, then I will switch to another tenant with the already developed solution. But I will walk through the whole end-to-end solution, what we're going to do today. Before we go, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Microsoft Fabric. I'm not going to go too detailed into this because Fabric itself is a very big topic to talk about. I think I saw Alex Justin said he probably will do something on get started on Fabric. So I will leave it up to him and Ken in the future session. We're going to talk about what is Dataflow Gen 2 is, how it is different than Gen 1, and where you can go to learn more about Dataflow Gen 2. Before we move forward, just about myself, my name is Parvinder Chana, and I'm here in Vancouver. Run my own consulting company called Predecessor IT Solution, mainly focused on Power BI, and now it is going to be Fabric. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, 5 years now. Awesome. Love it. And of course, I have a YouTube channel as well. Do subscribe. Videos on my YouTube channel are just not regular videos. They are more talked about some business problems, what I come across during my work with working with the customers. So those videos are very focused on real-time business problems and some unique use cases. Do check out those videos, and please connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out directly by email if you have any question or anything you want to ask about. Okay, so first of all, what is Dataflow? Before we start, I just want to ask everybody if you guys put on a chat +1. If you guys ever use Dataflow, not Gen 2, like previously, you ever used Gen Dataflow at all, or this is the first time you get to know about Dataflow? Two big guys are here. Okay, Mark never used it. Okay. Perfect. Great. So pretty much, I guess, given the number of answers, 60% people probably never used it or know about it, but never used it. And of course, Ken and Alex is here, big guys on that. So pretty much, if you guys are familiar about Power Query, this is Power Query Online. I would start with that just to simplify this thing. So Power Query is everywhere. And the reason, as I mentioned, I did a Dataflow presentation back in 2020. One of my largest clients actually started using Dataflow. And one of the reasons why they started using Dataflow was they were heavy users. It's in a finance department. They were heavy users of Excel, and they somehow start using Power Query. And with Power Query, they were transforming the data in Excel. And that's how they knew what Power Query is all about. And then they went to Power BI desktop, start using for visualization of the data. And then, of course, Power Query was there as well. And then they took that Excel transformation knowledge and brought that into desktop and start transforming data there. But the problem they were running into at that point of time was the very heavy transformation, very complex transformation they were doing. A lot of merging, grouping, and stuff like that, because they don't have any data warehouse underneath. They were working with the files on the SharePoint and all this stuff. So then that when I came in the picture, I introduced them to Dataflow. Basically, what happened, it was a win-win situation for them because it was faster in the cloud. They don't have to process data in desktop. They can pre-process data, they can use it. And the second thing was they don't have to learn anything new because they were already familiar with Power Query, and basically the same knowledge went into the cloud and they started using a Dataflow. So in other words, it's a Power Query online, and you basically have a self-prep, a low-code, no-code data prep tool, and that's what Dataflow is. And sometimes you will hear from the people like Power Query online. Pretty much what we're talking about that time is Dataflow. So that's what the Dataflow is, and so it's a cloud-based data prep technology. It's also known as Power Query Online. No code, low code. And if you guys, let me ask this: how many of you guys have used Power Query in either Excel or desktop? Like, if you guys are using those tools, like, are you familiar with Power Query, or you never used it, or you don't know if it exists? Okay, perfect. Sweet. Awesome. So if you are already using Power Query, so that means you are pretty much all set. If you never use Dataflow, you're ready to go with the Dataflow. So it's actually a better experience in the cloud, and the interface is amazing there, and a lot of advanced features in online, like visually creating the queries compared to the desktop. And so if you are already using Power Query, so Dataflow is pretty much you can use that is in the cloud again. That's what it is. So tons of I don't know, it's 150 connectors. Maybe Alex will tell it. So Ken will say it's probably 300 plus connectors. I don't know, but they're growing every day. Every time the new connectors come in, so there's a lot of connectors. That means is you can connect to a lot of sources, which are popular sources available in the market. Somebody has their hands up. Any question? Okay, continue. All right, so that's what the Dataflow is. So what is Dataflow Gen2? How it is different than like what it is like if Dataflow is a Power Query online, well, how the Gen2 is different. First of all, as I said, it's a Power Query online. What we do in a Power BI desktop, if we take an example of that, you're using Power Query today, what you're doing is you are connecting to a source. Your source could be an Excel file, it could be a SQL or web. And then what you're doing is you're extracting the data from your source, and then you're transforming it, you're shaping the data. And that's a two component you're doing in Dataflow or Power Query. In Dataflow Gen 1, which is, of course, Power Query Online, that is two things available today. You're extracting the data, connecting to the source, and then you're transforming the data. Now, the Gen 2 bring us the third component of it, which is the ETL, which is the load part of it, which is awesome, and I love it. What does that mean is you can load data to the destination. It means what you can do is you can connect to the source. Let's say you're connecting to CSV or some REST API calls you're making. You're bringing the data in, you're transforming the data. Now you transform the data. What you can do with it, you can put the data and load it to your either warehouse or Lakehouse or SQL Server and the real-time analytics Custo SQL as well. Again, these are the 4 options available as of today, but I'm sure in the future we will have more options where we can load our processed data or transform data. So this is one of the biggest win with the Gen 2, and I'm already working and doing a POC for my clients. The reason their data flow was so complex because every time, if we have 100 files to process, every time we are doing those 100 files, we can surely do some other techniques. We can process the data and store it and create another data flow. There's a lot of things we can do, but right now it's not straightforward. You have to really think out of the box. But with Gen 2, what you can do is you can really prepare the data, store it somewhere, and then you are always processing new data depending on the need. So the destination, loading the data to the destination is amazing. That's what I love about it. And we will see this in today's demo as well. And other big thing is a save as draft. This was the biggest pain point in the past in Gen 1. If you haven't used the data flow in the past, when you are doing the transformation or you are doing any sort of development in preparing your data, you have to really basically finish all your steps, all the transformation, and then there's no way that you can say, okay, we'll come back to it and then continue working on it. It's either you are working on it, you complete your transformation or whatever data preparation you're doing. You can't save it as a draft. And Gen 2, yes, you can. Let's say you started and connected to the source, you do few transformation, and then you have other things to do. You can actually save your work and you come back and you can pick it from where you left off. So this is a big win, especially when it's a very complex transformations. This becomes really handy because you are not stuck there to complete all your work, and you can't save as a draft. So background publishing, this is huge. Because in the past, if you have a really complex transformation, a lot of transformation going on, even in the smaller, when you're saving a data flow, basically it publish and then it does all the validation at that point of time. You are basically waiting for it to finish the validation. It's a very cumbersome and a slow process and very frustrating as well. But what Gen 2 bring to us is now you can actually, once you're done with your all the transformation, you can go and publish it. You can publish later and you can also publish at the same time. When the publishing happens, it closes the window and then you can continue with your other works. It will start validating everything or whatever it need to do. And if there's any issue, of course, you will get to know. Otherwise, the publishing happens in the background. This is a big save of time, and I'm pretty sure it's going to save me a lot of time. It's going to save a lot of my client as well because of this background publishing. And you can come back and see if there is any issue, and then you fix it. So this is a big thing. Refresh history. Current Dataflow Gen 1, if you look at the refresh history, it doesn't give you a lot of detail, but the newer one, you have really very detailed refresh history available. Let's say you have multiple tables in your data flow, and it will tell how long it took, or if anything fails, which table failed, and all the stuff. And it's a little bit more detailed because of the load data to the destination. It also gave you the details around that as well. So refresh history, which is really useful and a big. Of course, there will be improvement over time, but already I see a lot of value with the refresh history, and I'm enjoying it. Last but not least, it's an integration with pipeline. Again, what pipeline is, it's again a workflow. If you look at the fabric, under the data factory, there are 2 components. One is Dataflow Gen 2, the other one is the data pipeline. You can actually call data flow in the data pipeline as well. So basically, you can have your workflow data pipeline, let's say, get triggered with some action, or you're taking, in today's demo, again, if time allowed, we will see this end-to-end solution. So you can actually put your data flow in the pipeline as well. So it's pretty straightforward. The good thing about this is Fabric came out like 2 months ago, maybe a month ago, and I already created a few POC with keeping my knowledge and using data pipeline and able to create an end-to-end solution. It's so easy to use. And it's really, really powerful, especially when you have a Power Query knowledge with you, which you have probably learned over time, either in Excel or Power BI desktop. You can really bring that knowledge and start using Dataflow. And the missing components of Dataflow, which was not there in Gen 1, are now in Gen 2, and it's awesome. Again, I'm not going to go too technical in this thing. Basically, what this is, this article just came like probably a week ago. And the way it works is it spins up a staging, lakehouse, and a warehouse under the hood. When you connect to the source, it stores why it is faster. I am already seeing this works pretty fast compared to my Gen 1, because I have something to compare against, because I'm taking my Gen 1 data flow and bringing those into Gen 2 and comparing this, because it has the staging table under the hood where it processes the data, store the data, and then give it to the output if we need an output from our data flow. So there's a big article on this. You can read all about it. It's a very technical and provide all the detail how this whole thing works. There's a question from Bill. Does it require an additional license? Yes, you need a fabric capacity. The premium PPU doesn't work. One of the reasons behind that, again, the licensing and all the stuff is certain things. Maybe I don't have the full details around that, but because Dataflow Gen 2 uses some of the fabric components like a lakehouse and the warehouse, it need a fabric capacity. You cannot use, I think you don't have available this in Power BI Pro or the PPU. You need a premium capacity, whether Power BI premium capacity or the fabric capacity. I don't think this works with the PPU. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like that is the case. Great question, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly jump to my, I hope this works. If it does not, then I will switch to the already created solution. What I have here is, this is Canada Central tenant. Again, this issue just I'm seeing in Canada Central right now. A couple of other, I have a tenant in Europe was working fine. A tenant in USA is working fine. Canada Central is not working, so I'm not sure something is funny with this. Yes, Gen 1, the PPU will continue. Gen 1 is still there. It's going to stay there. I don't know, but yes, for Gen 2, with all the new features which we talk about in Gen 2, loading to the warehouse. Why that is important, loading to the data to the destination. One of the things I found is, let's say you're connecting to some REST API, pulling the data from some third-party systems. Usually they have some sort of limitations, like how much data you can pull, how far back you can go. With Dataflow, you connect to the web source, you bring the data in, you process the data and store it, and next time you can pull that remaining data or whatever the newer data is. You don't have to go back all the time. But in current scenario, either with the incremental refresh or with some tricks, you have to do it. If your web sources does not allow you to go back for the longer data set you can pull from there, it becomes really challenging. But with the newer Dataflow Gen 2, I believe this will help tremendously in pulling the data into those kind of sources. So yes, the Gen 1 will continue working with the PPU and with the Pro as well. What I have here is I have a one workspace, the Fabric workspace. As you can see, it's a premium capacity workspace, and I created a warehouse. In this demo, what we're going to do is we're creating a solution where I'm going to get in a foreign exchange rate from a third-party website, making it a REST API call, and then loading the data into a staging table in our warehouse. And then we will have the SQL endpoint or the SQL store procedure we will use to upsert the data into our final foreign exchange rate table. A very common scenario where people work with a multi-currency, they probably use this. So this is what I'm going to try to demo here. and if everything works fine. So what I have is I have a warehouse I already created. Again, this is a blank warehouse. What I did is, if you never played with the Fabric so far, went to the Fabric artifacts here, workloads, and just pick up the warehouse. Everything is in preview, of course, and give the name, and that's I have done so far. And every time we create a lakehouse in the warehouse, we automatically get a Power BI default data set. That's how it created. And you can see this is data set default. And if you create a lakehouse, you will have the 3 artifacts at that point of time, lakehouse itself, and then you will have a SQL endpoint, which will be the warehouse. And then you will also have a data set there as well. So that's what Lakehouse brings. 3 artifacts automatically get created. Again, why I'm showing the warehouse part of it and stored procedure, I came from a SQL background. I'm making my work through learning the newer technologies like a Python and notebooks and all that stuff. But because of my SQL background, this is one of the biggest thing I found with the Fabric is that my knowledge, which I have, Power Query and the SQL, which is my stronghold, I can really bring that knowledge and can start using Fabric from day one. I don't have to learn anything new to start using Fabric. So, which is really a win-win for everyone. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a Dataflow Gen2, and hopefully it will work. So the first part of this exercise is to create a data flow which make an REST API call, get the data from a website, third-party website. We do a little bit of a transformation, and then we will load the data into the warehouse. So that's kind of the part which data flow will play. Before I do that, I just want to show you guys what that data look like. So this is a free website, and what I have is this is the REST API call with my key in there. It's a free website. So basically, it returns a JSON a string as a value. The timestamp, you have the base currency, which is euro, what the date of the foreign exchange rate is, and what is the rate for the different currency. So that's kind of what the daily rate is, what we're gonna get. I already have a script for this. I'm gonna just start with the blank query and walk through the steps. So don't wanna spend time doing it here. I'm just gonna paste it in the advanced editor. Pretty straightforward. I know. So what I have here is, so we have a source here, which is again that API call I'm making. It give me a record, and then I'm converting it to the table. Again, I don't want to go through all these steps, expanding the rates, and then unpivoting. As in a best practices, we are unpivoting our data. So end of the day, what I have is this is my output, and what I have is a base currency, the date, what is the foreign currency is, what is the rate is, and the date time. Why I have a date time here is when I make an API call, I just want to say what time, because I might be making the API call a day, in a day many times. So I want to make sure that when the last API call was made. So this is what it returns to me. Now, for example, if I'm doing this thing and if I have to, for whatever reason, have to move on to some other work, I don't have to publish this. Let's say if this is not complete, as I said, you can actually save it. I can close this thing and it will ask me, are you sure you want to exit? And I can say yes. What does this means is it saved it as in a draft. Yes, I am sharing my screen. You're not seeing it?
I can see it over here fine, Parv. So
okay.
If Bill, I would suggest if you can't, it might be best probably just to even drop and rejoin the meeting. Is Teams is funny sometimes, right? So.
Okay, great. One of the things I want to talk about here is like, remember I mentioned in the PowerPoint, it does create the staging table under the hood, how it works. Before we created the data flow, we had two artifacts at that point in time. It was a warehouse, is a data warehouse, and then the data set. Now, as soon as I created a data flow, you see there's a lot of artifacts showed up. So they are supposed to be hidden, and don't get surprised if you start playing this and like what this is. I think over time, these are internal artifacts get created to support the Dataflow Gen 2. And the recommendation from Microsoft is don't delete these ones, don't use these ones for while they are exposed to you guys. Eventually, they will be hidden over time. But if you start playing with Dataflow Gen 2 and all of a sudden you see these 5 or 6 new things showed up, it's purely for the internal processing, not for us to use or not to worry about. It's just a part because it's in a preview and there are certain things which are getting worked on. And so as we saved it, but we haven't finished our transformation. We can actually save it. This is a big win. You can whatever the steps you are done with, you can move on, do other work, and you can come back to it. So, which is a really big win for Dataflow Gen 2. This feature is only available in Gen 2. It's not available in in previous Dataflow. Now I can come back to this, and of course I will start where I left off. And now again, the load part of this is the newer thing, which is add data to the destination, which was not available in Gen 1. You can actually decide where you want your data to get loaded. Again, there are 4 different options, all Fabric right now. Actually, Azure SQL database is outside Fabric. It could be outside Fabric, so you can load data your SQL database as well. But in this particular case, we're going to take an example of the warehouse that I'm loading my data to warehouse. So what we're going to do is we're going to select warehouse here. It will ask you the already created connection, but if you're doing it first time, it will ask you to create a new connection, and basically you authenticate that you want to create a warehouse. You want your connection to be warehouse. So that's what you will do, and then go to next. Here, there are certain interesting options here. What we will see. We have a new table or an existing table where you want the data to be stored. So if you already created a table, you can actually map to that existing table. But right now, because we don't have created any table, we don't have any table in our warehouse. So I'm going to let it to create a table by itself. So what I'm going to do is it's giving me all the warehouses I have in my tenant. So I'm going to, or I have access to. We are working on the ETL demo workspace. So as you can see, there's the staging warehouses as well. Those are automatically get created. We're not going to use that one, but the one which I created, I'm going to use that one, which is WHSC. And I'm going to call it a staging, the table, where the data will land. Why I'm saying the staging, because this is not my final place where I want my data to be. I'm using a new table and giving the name of the table and where it is going to get stored in my warehouse. So I'm going to go to next. At this point in time, it will ask me a couple of things here. Okay, what your destination column is going to look like, what the type is, and all the stuff. It's going to pick up the type. When the first time I worked on this, again, things are improving over time. I think the date type was not supported, but it works today. It has to be date time. It worked fine. Initially, when I worked I was getting some sort of an error. Few types were not supported. So if you see those kind of errors, maybe check out what kind of data types are supported to load on the warehouse. Also, you will see if your destination is a Lakehouse. Lakehouse is a case sensitive. I think if you have a column names in a uppercase, it will not support, or if you have a space in here, Lakehouse does not support that. But in data warehouse, don't have the issue with this. So this is how it will map to the destination. And we have 2 options here: append or replace. So if I choose replace, every time this data flow will run, it will, of course, replace all my table, my staging table, and insert the new rows only, whatever the rows are pulled from the source. If I go append, of course, we will use the append at that point in time. I'm going to use append just for demo's sake, even though I need a replace, but I'm going to still use an append in this case, because we're going to make use of a data pipeline in this case. So once we are done with this, we're happy. So we connected to the warehouse. We told it to create a new table and gave the name of the table, and then we're saying, okay, we're appending the data in there and save settings. And pretty much after this, if there's no error. Thanks, Alex. So Alex just put in there what the data types are supported. So now once this thing is done, so I'm ready to publish it. Again, previous Gen 1, if you go publish, or I think it's a save there. I don't know if it's a save or publish. If you do that, it will, we have only a simple table here. One table, if you have, let's say 50 tables or a complex transformation going on, the publish will take forever in Gen 1 because it will validate everything and it will show on the screen what it is going. It's better now, but still it will do a lot of stuff in front of you. So now what I can do is I can simply say publish. What's going to happen is at this point in time, it's going to close this window and it's going to start validating everything in the background. So I don't have to wait. You will see it will start spinning here. So what it's doing is it will validating whatever we have created in our data flow, whether everything is fine in that data flow or not. If there is an error, of course, we will see it here. One thing I think which a lot of people, I personally don't like it. As soon as the data flow publishing is going to finish, it is going to kick in the refresh of the data flow. As you can see, sometimes you just want to data flow to publish, but you don't want it to refresh, because if it's a complex data flow, you don't want it to start refreshing. And but what it does at this point of time, once you publish it, and Alex, take this feedback back, it should not start refreshing, because what I've seen in my real time production data flows, those are very, very complex. I don't want those to start running because I'm working on many things. No, it's not. It's refreshing right now. So as you can see, so this is refreshing. So what it is doing at this point of time, it's making an API call and writing the data to the data warehouse. So what I will do is, in the meantime, while this is working, let's switch to warehouse here. Should be somewhere here. Okay, so this is the warehouse, and let me refresh. You will see the staging FX rate table. It was, sorry, I should have shown this. There was no table called staging FX rate. And now data flow is refreshing and it has created this table for us. So let's see if it finished refreshing. It will take a little bit. And what I can do is, again, I'm coming from a SQL background. I can actually run my SQL queries against this table. And what I'm going to do is staging FX rate. So whatever the output was in, I think it's still, the name is correct. It's still not finished doing what it's supposed to do. Oh yeah, okay, here you go. So it's still refreshing, but I guess it's doing some cleaning work here. But as you can see, the data in our data flow, what we saw, the 5 data flow is actually now pushing the data to the warehouse. This is awesome. So now the data is in the staging table. But this is not the table I wanted to use. Let's say our use case is that every day, for each day, I want only single row for my currency table. I don't want the multiple rows. So if the data flow is running multiple times in a day, I don't want it to show the duplicate rows, right? So I want my final table, which I will use in my downstream systems like Power BI. I want it to be a clean data there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another table here. Again, this is the SQL thing. So that's my final, let's say, FX rate table, which I will use. And because I want to keep the same schema, I can create a create table command. I can do that, but rather than doing that, I'm going to get my schema from my staging FX rate table. So I'm going to run this. It will give me a table called FX rate here. So once it finished running, it automatically kicks the refresh. I hope it does. Yeah, here you go. Previously, you have to click the refresh to refresh the metadata. Now you see FX rate table is there. And if I, of course, if you click on that, it will preview the data. It's completely blank with the same structure as my staging FX rate. So what we have at this point in time, we have a data flow which runs, picks the data from a website, stored in the staging table. Now, what we want to be, the staging table is just a temporary place. What I want it to be come into the FX rate table. What I want my FX rate to be, if the record already exists in FX rate, then update the rate. If it does not exist, then insert the row in my FX rate table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a store procedure here, which will do that job for us. So let me grab my script here quickly for my store procedure, and let's copy it from my another monitor here. What I'm going to do is create new store procedure, or actually forget about this. I will just copy straight here and remove that. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a store procedure called upsert exchange rate. So my from my the first part I'm doing is a update if the record exists in my final table, which is FX rate in this case. And if it does not exist in there, then I want to insert. So I'm just going to change the name of the tables because this was done on my other one. So FX rate, and this one is staging FX rate. Okay, quickly change the table names here. Also, I have given the full. I'm gonna remove that, remove this, and staging FX rate table. So this I was working before our session today because something was going funny. And delete this one is FX rate. Okay, perfect. FX rate, staging FX rate, staging da da da. So what this thing is doing is it's pretty much upsert. So if record exists, then update. If it doesn't exist, then insert. So that's what this store procedure is doing. I'm not using the merge statement here. If you are a SQL background, you might say, why you're not using merge? Because merge allows us to whether upsert or a update or insert. Unfortunately, merge statement is still not available for Fabric Data Warehouse. Anytime, because we see this as an SQL, and what I found is when you are coming from the SQL background, you want to run all your SQL commands in here. Sometimes those commands doesn't work. The merge was not working, and the best way is to complain to Microsoft. The easiest way is go to the documentation of the merge statement in this particular case and see what is supported. So here I'm going to quickly show what maybe today supporting. What I found is I went to search for the merge transact SQL on SQL Server, and what I found here is this statement is only available for SQL database, SQL da 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 da. Nothing talked about the Fabric here. And if I go to, for example, update statement here, update command, and you will see warehouse in Microsoft Fabric. This tells me that the merge statement itself is not available in Fabric at this point of time. Otherwise, I would have used that. So if you run into this kind of challenge, I would highly recommend to go and look at the documentation. And this was easy answer for me rather than going and asking someone at Microsoft and then waiting on the reply. This answered my question, so I was happy with this. So that's why in my here in store procedure, that window here, I'm using in two separate queries one for the upset and one for the insert. So now this is done here. Now what we have is we have a data flow, pulls the data from web, put it in the staging table, and then we have a stored procedure which is actually inserting or updating the data in our final FX rate table. So how we put this all together, this is where data pipeline comes in the picture. So I'm going to quickly walk through that. How much time we have? Do we have 10 more minutes to go through that, or I can show the existing one? Ken?
No, absolutely. Go for it.
OK, perfect. So I'm going to go to my workspace ETL demo, and then what I'm going to do is show all here. And as I mentioned, under Data Factory, we have two components, Dataflow Gen2 and Data Pipeline. And when we talk about Dataflow Gen2, I mentioned about you can load data to the destination. We saw that you can save as in a draft. You can actually have the background in publishing. The refresh history is amazing. I will show you in a second. And the one point in there was that you can actually use it in data pipeline. And that is what I'm going to show that right now. So I'm going to go into data pipeline right now. I'm going to create a new pipeline here. Click data pipeline. It will ask me. I'm going to keep the name as it is. Don't want to be very creative. And pipeline 1. They click create. OK. It's working or not working? What's happening? I'm going to wait. Don't want to touch anything because I think it's already created the pipeline. I don't know what this dialog box is. Just want to double check. I'm going to quit. OK, pipeline is there. Perfect. So what we're going to do in the pipeline, as I said, I intentionally put when I create the Dataflow Gen2 in my staging table, instead of replace, I did append. So it will, every time it will run, it will add more rows to the staging. So what I want with the pipeline is before Dataflow run, I wanted to clear my staging table so that when the Dataflow runs, it only brings up the new rows in my staging table. And then my final step is to run the stored procedure, which will put the data into my FX rate table, which is the final rate table I'm looking for. That will be used in my downstream systems like Power BI and other areas. So the first part, what we're going to do is we need to clear our staging table. So I'm going to use a script here. Let's call it clear staging table. And pretty straightforward command here. Again, this is like you're running on the external on the workspace. So what I'm going to pick up the workspace and then which warehouse I'm going to run against. That is my WHSC. And then I'm going to delete from my staging table, which is staging FX rate table. And that's my first part. And what I'm going to do is let's look quickly, go back here and go to warehouse, and I want to show you guys here. If I go to warehouse, if I go to staging FX rate, we will see there's a 5 rows. This is a UTC time, whatever the time it is, midnight, and 5 rows here. So what I did in pipeline is I said clear staging table. If I run this right now, what it's supposed to do is it's gonna delete all the rows from my staging FX rate table. And let's say if it should take probably 10 seconds to run. And once it completed, what we'll see in our staging table there, all the rows will be gone. It just to let you guys know, this refreshes after every 30 seconds. You can manually refresh it, what's happening here, but otherwise, I think after 30 seconds, it refresh itself to show what's going on. So it's already succeeded. And if I just quickly refresh my staging FX rate, so all the rows are deleted, so there's no data. So it means the pipeline worked. Now the next part is clear my staging table. The next component of this is what I want to do is I want to execute my data flow. So I'm gonna have data flow. So what I'm gonna call it, data flow get FX rate. So in the settings, what I'm gonna do is, oh, sorry, I should have changed the name. It's called Dataflow 2. Again, there are certain options probably will come up in the future. So no notification, all the stuff. If you hover over coming soon, so I guess there's nothing we can do about it. So what does that means is once my staging is done, I want to run the data flow. What does this means is it will go pull up the data from that web and store in the staging table. So that's the second part of it. And the third part is that I want to run my store procedure, which will then take the data from my staging table and do the upsert. So what I'm going to do is upsert FX rate and go to settings and workspace and warehouse, and then probably we will see our stored procedure here. Okay, here you go. That's one we created. And our next step is to do that. That's pretty much it. So pretty much what we have is now end-to-end solution where we clearing our staging table, getting the new FX rate, and depending on the logic we have in the stored procedure, we are writing the data to our final destination table. So I'm gonna run this thing, save and run. It will probably take a minute or so, but in the meantime, what I'm going to do is go back to Power BI. Let's go to our ETL demo. I just want to show you guys the refresh history for this thing. If we go to Dataflow 2, again, this is the one which we just created. I don't know why the name is Dataflow 2. Where is 1? Refresh history. And this is the one we ran before. So it told us that this query executed. Let's say if I had multiple queries in my data flow, multiple tables there, I should have seen those ones. And if I click on this one, it will tell what it did. It pulled the data from the web. There's no much information in here. And then it used Lakehouse. Again, I don't know what to make out of it at this point of time, but that's the number of bytes, the volume it has processed. So it's much better than what Dataflow Gen 1 was. It will only tell you Dataflow Gen 1 or the previous one, the current one, which is in the production right now. We will say if it's successful or failure. If it's a failure, it will give an error. Sometimes it's a useful error, sometimes it's not at all. You can't make it out what it is, which I'm dealing with right now, actually with one of my clients. And then because we told it to write the data to our destination table, which was a staging table, so it automatically gave us, okay, this activity has been done after that. If I click on that, so it showed us how many rows were. Again, it probably this warehouse and the Lakehouse, what it is showing is the one I mentioned is the staging tables in between it is using. So it's showing us the 5 rows were written in the Lakehouse or processed and also in the warehouse. So that it provides a little bit more details. And you can actually, I think you can download it as a CSV for if we click on this one, don't open it. Where should I click here? Okay, and then I can download as CSV. If it's I think it will provide more details in there. I haven't looked at it, but you can actually download that refresh history. And I guess this goes more deep into the refresh details in there. So this is already improved. You know which one is. If I have a multiple queries or tables in my data flow, If maybe 7 or 8 of them are working fine, the 9th one is not working. It will show you which one succeeded, which one failed. So it's easy to debug and to work on. So let's go back to our pipeline 1. Okay, it's completed. So as you can see, 10 seconds to clear the staging table. Again, 51 seconds to get the data, and then 13 seconds to write into our final destination table. So what I'm going to go back to our warehouse here. So now what we'll see in the staging, if we go FX rate, so we have now in our final table FX rate, we have the data in there, and we should have a data in the staging as well, because it's been pulled first in the staging and then pushed into the FX rate in the logic we have. If I run my pipeline again, what is going to happen is I will not have duplicate rows in there. This timestamp will change. This was executed 1:06 a.m. UTC time. I think that's the time it is. And if I run it now, I can see when the last FX rate for that date came in for this date and whatever the rate was. So if multiple time data flow is running or the pipeline is running, I will always get my unique record in my FX rate table. Again, it's depending on what your business is looking for. But one thing I can tell you, putting this thing together, like what we did probably in 30 minutes or so, and it was so simple. And previously, if I have to do all that stuff, I don't know, I have to use some other things I need to bring, how to store the data, how to transfer, how to pull, and all the stuff, Power Automate, and a few other things I have to do. Now it's so simple to do this end to end, and it's working perfectly fine. And the one thing which I really love about it is that I'm doing all the stuff without learning anything new. This SQL I know from last 20 years, Power Query I know from last 4 or 5 years, and I have a solution. And Fabric came out like 2 months ago, and I have a solution end to end without reinventing or learning or doing something, going to learn some new technology, and I have a solution in place. And of course, it will improve over time. And it's still in a preview. I'm glad it worked, actually. It was not working when I was testing it previously. Thanks, Alex, for you being here. I think it made it work. So that's kind of what I want to show today. And I'm going to quickly jump back to the presentation here.
Before you leave the the Fabric portal, do you mind if I defend Dataflow 2 and some of the features?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's jump back to it. One you had kind of mentioned was whenever you hit publish, it automatically kicks off the refresh. Could you go into the editing experience of a Dataflow Gen 2 for me, if you don't mind? Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
I was sitting here in the background. I was like, I don't want to throw him off his game, but I got to stand up for my Dataflows.
Let me get back to.
No, right here is a good place. Go back to your pipeline.
Okay, perfect.
So in your pipeline, yep. So for users, you can just click on the edit Dataflow and it'll jump you right into the editor.
Yeah, this I saw this morning when I was trying to test everything. I'm like, wow, this is so nice. I can straight from pipeline, I can go to my Dataflow.
All right. So first thing you were like, I'm so frustrated. Every time I hit publish, I've got to wait for it to refresh and do all this stuff. Bottom right-hand corner, Parv, click it. Awesome. Publish now, publish later. Yes. If you're like, I don't want to publish, I don't want it to automatically kick off the refresh, hit publish later. It'll save the mashup document to your workspace, and then you can come back and easily jump in and edit. So that's one big one. On the left-hand side here in your queries pane, could you right-click that query for me? Oh, left side. Yep. Aha. So instead of enable load, we now have enable staging.
Ooh, yeah.
So you were talking about, that data and that table is ending up in the Lakehouse. You're not really sure why we're having to write it there. If you were wanting to do like large scale data transformations, absolutely stage it in a Lakehouse. But for something like this, I'm pretty confident in the mashup engine. We're returning like 5 rows. I don't need that you could disable this enable staging, Parv, and now it'll write directly to your warehouse. So it won't be staged anywhere in the lake. You don't have to worry about kind of that extra hop, that extra process. Hopefully speed up a little bit of your time and reliability there too. But I wanted to share those with you. I wanted to share those with you, man. I love the presentation, so thank you. Yeah,
this is awesome. Yeah, I saw that, this documentation, the on my PowerPoint, this was talked about. Actually, I want to show it to everyone here. I read about this recently on this thing. Just give me a quick second here. I will bring it up. Since you talked about this, let's see. No, I have to find that out. But there was a amazing blog post on this. Okay, here you go. And I want to bring that up here if my computer keep on working. So here it was, again, in my presentation, I have a really put a useful links in there, which I will share with Ken and with you can share with everyone. Here it says in here that if you don't want your staging to get done, you can turn that off and you can go straight to the output destination. This article is amazing and I loved it. And so it's already shown here. Pretty cool. Thanks for pointing that out. It's awesome. Okay, let's see what else we have now. Okay, awesome. Any questions so far? Sorry, I did not had a chance to because I want to make sure it's working. Yeah, so does it support incremental refresh? Let's come to that. Yes, I will. Let me actually, while we are on this, why not do that? Announcing a. Let's grab this link from here and post it in the Teams chat. Here you go. So incremental refresh, no, it does not. Alex can talk more about it, but here is the big difference between Gen 1 versus Gen 2. The data flows with Power Query, of course, both support, and then there's a tons of features you can see, autosave and background publishing. We saw that data destination, improved monitoring and refresh history, integration with data pipelines. We all saw that, and high scale compute is, I think that's the staging part of it. And get data via Dataflow's connector. Of course, both of these supports. Direct query via Dataflow's connector. I think that does not support at this point in time in Gen 2. Incremental refresh, unfortunately, does not support at this point in time. AI insight support is also, I think increment refresh will come. It's not there yet. This question comes many times. I think Alex has already answered somebody on the community forum. I think I saw that Alex said the existing one is not great and they are coming up with some amazing solutions on this. So incremental refresh currently no. But what I showed today is pretty much incremental refresh, right? I'm just getting a new data. I'm not going back, and then through the pipeline, I can control whatever I want, right? I can really load data in my staging table, and then from there onwards, if you're using notebooks, Python guy, you can use that, and if I'm a SQL guy, I can use that to manage my data. So I think it can be used in a different way, not what the out of the box incremental refresh is available today. All right. Perfect. Is there anything else I have to say here? No, pretty much that's what I wanted to show. Glad it worked. Actually, it was not working an hour ago. Thanks and for listening and seeing this. And I had a backup plan. which I didn't want to use, but glad it worked. So we able to do everything from scratch. The one thing I wanted to do is to see how it is once you know what you're trying to do, like how easy to put together everything. Again, in this slideshow, I put some links here, which is I think I found important, like what is the overview of Gen 2, how you move query from Gen 1 to Gen 2. If you're already using Gen 1 and you want to bring it to Gen 2, which I'm doing right now because I have a big inventory in Gen 1, I want to bring it to Gen 2 and start testing this. So the topic which we just saw, that inside Dataflow Gen 2, I shared the link, and that's what it is. Using Dataflow in pipeline. This is again Microsoft documentation, but we saw the real demo here, how easy it was to bring Dataflow in our pipeline and then leverage the whole workflow from deleting the staging table, let Dataflow bring the data and insert in staging table, and then we took a store procedure to upsert the data. And one thing I want to point it out, if you have a on-premise a data source and you want to use Dataflow Gen 2 and writing the data to the destination, there are few consideration you have to take care of, the firewall and certain things. There is a amazing documentation from Microsoft. You should look into that if you run into any kind of challenges. And that's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to show today, and everything worked perfectly fine. Thank you very much for being with me and open for questions. Alex is here. He can really answer all the questions, but do leave a feedback for me. I would really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ken, for having me.
Thanks, Parv. I got a question for you. I'm actually just kind of curious on this because, I mean, for me personally, my history is if I want to spin up a database, I'm going to use something like Azure SQL and load my data into there and keep it there. What do you see the future is of things like an Azure SQL scenario here? I mean, would you bother if you're just trying to store small sets of data, or would you actually just go through Fabric and say, hey, I'm going to put it in a data lake and build my own data warehouse that way and skip SQL altogether?
Yeah. I think 100%, because I think that's where if you have a small SQL requirement, not large, I think one of the missing pieces which we're not talking about these days, or we do talk about, there's a Lakehouse, there's a warehouse, and then there's a data mart as well. Like people are asking about again and again, what is the functionality of data mart is all about. I think for smaller data sizes and all the stuff, data mart will be that one of the tools. But as you said, if you're starting from scratch, and you want to provision SQL Server is a SQL Server, maybe Data Mart is the place to go to. I would surely go through that because everything is in one single place and so easy to manage and work with. I think, let's say if you create a Data Mart here and somebody wants to come with a Python background and want to do something crazy with it, right? They don't have to go anywhere. Everything is within the Fabric landscape. So again, it's in a preview. There's so much unknown at this point of time, right? How much cost it's going to cost, right? Right now we are in a trial and all this stuff. We don't know, right? Once the money things comes in the picture, then that will help to make some decision, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, it's always the tricky part is the cash flow, right? Is you know, what's it worth, right? So because I mean, I know certainly, I mean, in an Azure SQL database, there's not a lot of stuff going on. It's pretty cheap to run, and that's sort of the thing. I'm looking at this going, oh, I see the word capacity. That starts to sound costly, but anyway, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to throw shade there until we can actually get a price list. So there you go. Anyway, I think there are actually a couple of other questions maybe that are in the chat here, or at least one from Seth. Should I think about this as ETL when you can't fold to the source?
Ooh, yeah, why not, right? So right now I did this REST API call does not fold, right? Then I can use this as an ETL tool. I would 100% use this as I will use it as an ETL tool if it's it does not fold, but yeah, if it folds, again, it's going to be a lot of stuff on because storing and data is going to be very, very cheap. It's all about the compute and all the stuff. We don't know how does that look like. At this point of time, my existing work, what I've done with the Dataflow Gen 1 and some of those data flows are running for more than like 4 to 6 hours because it's such a complex, lot of merging and grouping and all that stuff, right? And but it is not costing too much at this point of time. But if I can use Dataflow Gen2, read those files which does not fold and process the data and store in somewhere at the final destination, I will use that in the ETL tool because I look at from the business and my client, like as I said, the finance people are using this. They are managing this end-to-end solution. They're super happy with Dataflow right now because of the Power Query knowledge. Because thing is, again, I don't want to stick to the Power Query, but it's a low code, no code as well, and it's so easy to do that stuff. So I think it make it really, really a powerful tool for ETL. I have to find a reason when I will not use Dataflow Gen2 as my ETL tool. I really would like to find a reason why I can use Dataflow as my ETL tool. And then I will do a session on that because I could not use it. Maybe the money is going to be one of the part. I don't know.
We'll see. All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat on this one. So, you know what, I think we'll wrap it up for tonight. But Parv, thanks again for coming and doing this. I really appreciate it. It's been great to have you back on this. I also want to say a big thanks once again to Joseph for doing the what's new in Power BI for us again. Fantastic to have him here as well. I will have the recording of this produced and uploaded tomorrow. I'm going to be away this weekend, so I'm going to make absolutely certain that it is available for everybody on Friday at some point. And on that note, don't forget we have a couple of great meetups coming up with Alan Murray and with Reed Haven. So don't forget to sign up for those. We will see you all next time. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
You bet.